Hi students, and welcome to the In My Feelings Emotional Intelligence course, and this is lesson 1. So in this lesson we will be covering the children's emotional armor, and the outcomes of this lesson will be you understanding that your childhood emotional armor no longer serves you as an adult or your relationships. And then the second outcome is understanding that you need to create a safe environment within yourself to protect the inner wounded child so that the adult version of yourself can heal. And the third thing is for us to understand that emotions are very complex, and some of them are still linked to past traumatic events. And this is why when we are triggered in the present, we are transported back into the past, and our bodies, not knowing that the threat has already ceased long time ago, respond as if the traumatic event is happening now. So we're gonna understand what causes that internally within us, and how can we work on stopping that or improving our life and maximizing our mental health. Okay guys, now let's dive deep into this lesson and get some insights. So yes, in an ideal world, a child should be born to a home that is full of love, and they are protected emotionally and mentally, because our parents are the first point of contact. They guide us through life, so their influence is quite big in our lives. It has a major impact. That's why many people who have attachment issues struggle to make better connections later on in life, because if you don't get that parental relationship, that first attachment right, it really derails people's abilities to interact and connect with others later on in life. So that becomes a very huge problem. Now we know that, parents, even though they do try their best and they want to give us the best of themselves, somehow they fall short. But before we assign blame to them and start pointing fingers at everybody, we must understand that they also victims of trauma, that their lack of connection is not from a lack of trying, but rather they don't know how to connect with us, because they also grew up in a dysfunctional home, and they're only just repeating patterns that they learned in their homes as well with their parents. Now, what kind of trauma creates such generational trauma? You're right. I pretty much just said it. It is generational trauma. It's trauma that's just passed down from generation to generation in the household. And how would you recognize this type of trauma in a household? So ways of recognizing it is through domestic violence, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, child abuse, child neglect, poverty, and war-related traumas, like in South Africa, the apartheid, where people witnessed a lot of horrific stuff. They were tortured, and they ended up with having PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. So most of them are living with those types of issues, and it makes it very hard for them to interact with other people in their lives, which causes a dysfunction in families, because people are struggling to connect well and build an emotional connection, which becomes like an emotional safety net for children as well as their partners. So now, as a child, when you are born into a household that is dysfunctional, you can't tell it's dysfunctional when you're born to it, because you've just been born into this household. You don't have anything to compare it with. Therefore, what you see is what you believe to be right. You're trusting your parents to guide you, and they show you how to interact with life, how to live life, and how to build relationships. So that first relationship with your parents cements your perception of relationships and how to move forward in relationships, which is very important. And if they don't get it right, like I said, you spend a lot of years as an adult unlearning all those mistakes, which can be emotionally and mentally draining, but powerful when you heal. But some people don't want to do the work, so they continue in this vicious traumatic cycle, which means that the next generation from them just picks up where they left off. Now that we understand that a dysfunctional family has generational trauma, and this is the reason why children find these coping tools in order to survive their lives. Because as children, even though we're very perceptive, as children, even though we don't have the vocabulary to express what we are feeling, we know something is not right. But this is the only thing we've ever known in our entire lives. And we are grateful that we have parents. We are grateful to have a roof over our head. We're grateful to have our needs met. But we are yearning for something more, that emotional connection. And somehow it's not coming. And we really, really want it, because as human beings, we are wired for connection. It is part of our survival. So in order for us to survive our lives, we have to build this emotional armor to protect ourselves from these traumatic events that keep happening, that we have no control over, that other people exert their influence on us, which are our parents or our caregivers. So we build these coping tools to just survive life. But at some point, we need to let them go in order to live healthy lives as adults. So now that we understand why we build these coping tools, now the next question is, who does the building? Where do you get these coping tools from? Where does Armour come from? And I'm glad we're really asking that question, because the answer is it comes from your brain. Yes, your brain's job is to protect you from traumatic events, from you fully experiencing traumatic events. Now, if you were to sit down and somebody had to tell you a story that happened in the past when you were a child, it's always like feels very fuzzy for you. You never remember it the same way that they remember it, and the feelings that came up for them there and all that stuff. For you, it always feels like it's like you remember it from a distance, and all the things they're saying to you really surprise you, and you're just like, really? Did it happen that way? I don't remember that. Really? Did I cry? Wow, okay, I don't really remember. That's because your brain's job is to shield you from all that trauma. And in doing that, the brain shuts down other non-essential brain functioning, and it impacts your memory and emotional center. So it shrinks your hippocampus, which is part of your brain. And it shrinks that part that controls your emotion and memory. Which means that your brain is not functioning at its optimal best. It messes around with your memories, as well as knowing how to respond correctly to certain situations. And not only that, you lose the ability to tell whether a trauma has happened in the present or in the past. Your body responds to, when you are triggered by somebody in the present, or emotionally triggered by somebody in the present, your body responds as if the traumatic event is happening now. So you experience the full-on body symptoms, like the anxiety, the palpitations, the sweaty palms, feeling faint, or feeling nauseous. You experience it as if it's happening right now, because by shrinking your hippocampus, you cannot tell. And that is the side effect of trauma. When your brain tries to shield you, it unfortunately creates a negative impact to the rest of the parts of your brain. So now that we know that while our brain is trying to protect us, at the same time, it breaks down a few parts of our brain in the process. Now, what are we going to do about that? Now, this has been happening, especially if you've grown up in a household that has been full of a lot of traumas and is dysfunctional. This has been happening throughout your childhood. So that means that probably your hippocampus has shrunk, and it's very small right now, and you seem to be struggling with connecting with people emotionally, and some of your memories, like I said, are very fuzzy. But there is hope. You can still grow your hippocampus, and it can still go back to its natural size. Okay, so it is not a hopeless situation. You can still do that, which will require you to do a lot of healing and letting go of the childhood armor that you put on. So this might mean you need to seek some professional help to help you unlearn some of those coping tools and dive deeper into the root cause of the issues that you're currently experiencing. Now, guys, to just end off this beautiful lesson, you can go into your workbook. We have some activities that you can start doing now to kickstart that healing journey, or at least be the first step towards putting down your armor. Now, I know it's hard and you've relied on this armor for a very long time, but really now is the time to put it down. And I look forward to seeing your new journey when you are without your armor and you're ready to embrace life and all the contrasting feelings that come with it. So guys, thank you so much for listening to this lesson, and I will see you in lesson 2.